Hey everybody, it's Carly from runninginto shape.com. Thank you so much for checking out my latest video. Today I'm going to do a book review of the South Beach Diet book. Here is what it looks like. It was written by cardiologist Dr. Arthur Agustin in 2003. And yes, I realize that it is now 2011. My dad tried to get me to read this book for years and years and years. And finally, the other day, I told him, I don't want to talk to you about diets anymore. I don't want to talk about the South Beach book. And he said, I am your father, and I will talk to you about dieting if it's good for your health. And he was really a little stern about it. So I went to my bookshelf. I picked up the copy of the book that he bought me years ago, and I actually read it. It's a pretty easy read. I got through it in 2 days, and I was floored at how much information I learned. I really thought I knew everything there was to know about a calorie and what's good and what's bad and low fat and low carb. The computer is going to die. Give me 1 second to plug it up. Sorry. Okay. Computer's plugged up. We're good to go. Okay. So I will tell you a little bit about the South Beach Diet. It's done in phases. There are 3 phases. The first phase is 2 weeks, and it's pretty much a low carb diet, not Atkins, where you can just eat essentially anything. You can have bacon and hamburgers every day. It doesn't allow for that, but it does allow for some carbs and some good fats. You will, in the first 2 weeks, you will eat plenty of vegetables, eggs, cheese, nuts. You will eat meat, chicken, fish, turkey, and shellfish. So that's pretty much how the first phase goes. And even in the first phase, you can have dessert every day after dinner. That was on the first page, and so that's probably what kept me reading the book. Anytime you say that I can have dessert every day, that sounds like a meal plan for me. So that's pretty much how the first phase works. Like I said, with those key foods that I mentioned, it's really pretty strict. The good news is that most people who complete phase 1 during those 14 days lose anywhere from 8 to 13 pounds. So that is pretty significant. That's almost like a pound a day that people lose when they do the first 2 weeks, and they're not starving. It's not any of that restrictive 500 calories a day. It's you're getting breakfast, you're getting lunch, you're getting dinner, you're getting snacks, and you're not hungry. He says that it's a diet for people who like to eat. It's just that you don't get to eat all the things that you might typically like to enjoy. Phase 2, you get to incorporate some of the other carbs that were and limited from phase 1. Phase 3 is actually starts after you reach your goal weight. So you stay on phase 2 until you get down to where you want to get to, and then you can get to phase 3, and that's pretty much the maintenance lifestyle phase. Looks like Maya's trying to come in. Okay. He also talks about how you will lose weight and alter your body so that your body chemistry actually changes and reacts and responds to the food that you eat. And once you do that, you will alter your blood chemistry, which will cause you to not be as hungry as you were before. A lot of those cravings will disappear when you eat in accordance to the ways that he's lined out. He also puts a nice focus on the omega-3 fatty acids. In Western culture over here in America, we don't really eat as much fish as we should. I know that I have a lot of international readers and runners, but we don't eat nearly as much fish as people in different countries eat. He also talks about PCOS. PCOS is polycystic ovary syndrome. It's similar to prediabetes and insulin resistance. Unfortunately, I do have PCOS. It's not something that I talk about often. I guess primarily because I'm not really ready to have a child just yet. So it doesn't affect me as much with infertility and that sort of thing. However, I do realize that I just turned 30, and one day soon, I guess not real soon, but one day I will have to consider, how my diet is affecting the PCOS and what steps will need to be taken so that I am able to conceive one day. So that was pretty interesting for me to see that he's actually had patients who have PCOS and were not able to conceive but went on the diet and then were. So that was really interesting to me how much it changes your internal chemistry if you eat the right carbs and the right fats. Um, Here he talks about you pretty much won't have white bread and white potatoes ever, but you can have whole grain bread and you can have sweet potatoes. You can have brown rice and not white rice. He even talks about how to make mashed potatoes from cauliflower. And I've actually heard from people that that tastes good. I haven't tried it myself. I will one day and I'll post the recipe and how I did it for you guys. But I've heard that that's a really great replacement for mashed potatoes. It's sort of like pureed cauliflower. Um, the whole grain bread, not to be confused with whole wheat bread. You may have to go to your local Whole Food store or the bakery to get it because it is, again, whole grain bread. It's bread that your body has to process. He essentially feels like white bread and whole wheat bread are pretty much pre chewed, and your body pre chewed is actually the word that I chose, but it's processed. And so, your body doesn't have to work as hard. And so it just goes right through you, and you feel the need to eat again to keep those levels where they were. It just doesn't stick with you. So what you want to shoot for is whole grain bread. He also talks about the glycemic index. The glycemic index, oddly enough, is something that I had never even heard of before. But he has a chart in the book. Which I thought I had flagged. He has a chart in the book where he talks about the glycemic index and the different levels of sugar that different foods have. I pretty much thought that, like, well, I knew that all fruits and vegetables weren't created equal, but I didn't know that there was such a significant difference. He has a chart in the book, and not that I expect you to be able to read the chart on the video, but just so you can see what I'm referring to. And he has different sections that talk about what the different foods have. For example, with the fruits and vegetables, cherries have a glycemic index number of 32, which is very low, and then watermelon shoots all the way up to 103. So basically, if you had a choice between cherries and watermelon, you probably want to opt for the cherries because they have a lower glycemic index and you will be fuller longer, and it will affect your body chemistry differently and how fast it processes it. And so he has lots of different foods listed on the glycemic index. Yeah, and it's still, he's just saying how when you eat bad carbohydrates, especially the highly processed ones, like food that comes in a box, it creates cravings for more bad carbs, which is ultimately responsible for the epidemic of obesity. So it's because, in Dr. Agustin, he says that because of all the processed foods that we're eating, it makes us crave and want more foods. And if we eliminate a lot of those, then our body will be reset pretty much to the way it's normally, naturally supposed to be. And we won't crave the donuts and cakes and cookies and that sort of thing. Now here I have a sticky note that says Oprah. I have no idea why it says Oprah, but I will read to you what I highlighted because maybe it means something to you or it might mean something to Oprah. Who knows? It says next time you visit a supermarket, examine the nutritional information on all the low-fat products. Invariably, you will find that processed carbs have been added to replace the fats. Or notice how many breads are labeled vitamin enriched or fortified, which means that much of the natural fiber, which contains the vitamins, has been stripped away, that some nutrients had to be added back in. So that was really, really eye-opening to me. Like, I never thought about what is it that they have to do to take regular food and make it low-fat food. And he's indicated here that what they do is they add in more carbs. So it makes me wonder how effective is the low-fat diet anyway, if they're just adding in more carbs, which your body is processing, the sugar. Let's see here. This is just talking about the success that people have in phase 1 during the first 2 weeks. He said a lot of times people fail because they're so successful at weeks 1 through 2 that they feel like, oh, I could do this for 6 months and lose, 100 pounds. But he specifically says you're only to do phase 1 for 2 weeks just so that your body can flush out all of those carbs and then move on to the next phase so that it's something you want to stick to. Nobody wants to eat really restrictive, food for a long period of time. So he just emphasizes the importance of following the plan as it's laid out. And the rest of the book is pretty much daily meal plans. He breaks it down really specifically: breakfast, lunch, dinner, and snacks for all the different phases. So the book itself is pretty much a short read. If you can see here, it's about half and half, and this second half over here is just all diets and meal plans and menus. So I learned a lot. I skipped over a lot too because I didn't want to bore you. He talked a lot about diabetes and the effects that all this food has on your heart, and he puts it in simple language so that you can understand and appreciate what food is supposed to do and what the processed food actually does to you. So I hope that you enjoyed. I hope that you learned something. I am definitely going to give the South Beach Diet a try, and I will keep you guys posted. Thanks for your support. Bye-bye.